Kilo 2, Yankee November.
Kilo 2, Yankee November. Go ahead.
Well, hello, Jim. This is K2YN, and we are in Simpsonville, South Carolina. We've talked once before, and you're coming in beautifully here to South Carolina. And the name is John. And just thought we'd pay a visit and say hi. I realize you record this and put it on YouTube, and that's kind of neat. Go ahead.
Roger, John. How is billiards?
Oh, it's good. I haven't really played much in the last few days. I've been rewiring the shack, and I just finished, and I'm going to put a picture on QRZ tomorrow of when I clean up around it. I still have the boxes with the cables to label and put back on the shelf and put the tools away. Stuff like that. Over?
Oh, Roger. You know, I think station design is just, it's a whole thing within itself. I've tried to lay out my studio with, the radio power amp on one side, audio stuff on the other side. Try to separate those as much as possible, because you don't want your audio preamp next door to your KW. And you don't want your ground, your spider system. I had a great deal of problems connecting my audio preamp to the same ground as my SB220 ground. So consequently, I wound up with 3 grounds, one just for the power amp and associated antenna tuner and antenna selector. I have a 1/6 position rotary switch that I catch most everything on, and then I have one that goes through the tuner for 80 meters. But anyway, so 3 grounds, but 2 of those grounds share a common spider to the other part of the equipment, which is one of those is the preamp ground, which is, like I say, separated from the power amp ground.
Yeah, well, we do essentially some of the same thing here, but I have a 220 line for my linear, so it's a separate cable through the wall and here to the station location, and then I run from a different part of the panel and the other side of the panel, actually, in the ground connection. I run the 115 to all the other equipment. Also, I have what I call a chain filter to keep things clean. Trip Light, makes breakout boxes, or power strips, you might call them, that have a filter per every 2 plugs. So it's 25 dB of attenuation at the first pair, 50 dB attenuation to RFI on the second pair, and on the third pair, on a 6-outlet box, the 6th pair is 75 dB attenuation. And I have 5 of those boxes stretched along the length of an 8-foot table, and over on the left side I have a 4-foot table, forming an L for my operating. And I have plenty of plugs. You don't have to pull the lines all the way over to some location. You drop your AC cord straight down and it'll go right into a box, a power box. And so by the time the AC has reached the computer, which is at the end, it's gone through 4 of these 75 dB filters. The first filter box has just the basics, not the radio equipment. The second filter box at the 75 dB point, I plugged in the DC power for my transceiver. And it goes on like that. I use the leftmost plugs for the sensitive equipment because that's the highest dB of attenuation RFI in these boxes. A lot of people aren't aware of them. Usually a box has one filter and that's it. These have three. Over.
Oh, that's great. And I'm assuming what you're saying is these boxes are under the table towards the back?
Correct. You're right, Jim.
Roger, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, obviously now you're running that new setup, Roger?
Yes, that's correct, too.
Roger, sounds good, man. Sounds really good. You know, the whole thing is, you know, keeping RF going in the one area and the audio going in another area, and hopefully never the two shall meet. I mean, you know, RF and the AF and stuff like that.
Right. It's the power's off to the right, and the AF is in the center of the table. And the transceiver and all the RF generation equipment is off to the right. Over. Roger.
Well, that's you know, that's the way it should be. You know, just kind of keep things segregated. Because, like say, you know, with me and I fought for a long time RF and the AF because I get so much stuff tied to both ends. I mean, I got a bunch of stuff tied to the mic input of the radio. I mean, it goes through a whole situation there. And then I've got a bunch of stuff tied to the output of the radio, you know, just to facilitate our Qso-Vlog recording and stuff. And so, you know, when you start hanging stuff on the front end of a radio and then put a KW 2 foot away, you know, it's kind of like asking for trouble. And so it took quite a while. And, you know, you would one of those things where you would solve the problem on one band, and then you would go to another band, and all of a sudden you got a problem there, and you would solve that, and you go back to another band, and you would have a problem there. So back and forth, and eventually, like I say, I wound up with three grounds, and things tend to have calmed down somewhat since then, Roger.
Roger. Yes, I have two. And the 115 volt AC, as I described, has a string of filters on it, which the filtration to RFI and EMI just increases as you go down the line. And at the end of the line is the PC that operates my SDR radio. So it's all been planned a bit, you know, with that in mind. And we're running the Anon 7000 DLE, and the amplifier is an Alpha 8410. And that's going into a AT4K Powstar tuner, out a balanced feed line to a 40-meter double extended ZEP at 75 feet. And the broadside's looking your way. Jim, go ahead.
Oh, Roger. Now, you're running through the tuner all the time, or just some of the time?
In this case, all the time. I am changing antennas in October. And I'll be running balanced feed line all the way into the shack, which will be fine because I trim it to the proper length where you have no RFI on, you know, 160 through 10. And I've done this in the past and it's worked out. And then the other antenna will be coaxial fed, and that will not require a tuner. I usually, on the lower frequencies, I usually run through a tuner because on the edges of the band, I cut for resonance in the middle. On the edges of the band, you come up a couple tenths, and I like to flatten that out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I do all my trim at middle frequency, and then, you know, hopefully you do have excursions of SWR as you approach the outer bands, but how often are you actually out to one edge of the band and or the other? You know, usually you're somewhere in between, you know, and so I just trim for middle frequency, and I have a way, you know, I've got 3 inverted V's, and I started a tuning method on the inverted V's of doing, I'm not using a balun, I am running a choke on those bands. Let's see, it's 15, 20, and 40. And those are inverted V's off the tower. I had to convert some of my metal guys to inverted V's, but I do have 3 of them. And I started a tuning method whereby I would do my SWR nibbling on the negative side, and I would bring it back onto frequency on the high side of the dipole, and back and forth and back and forth. And so those 3 inverted V's are running 1.01 to 1, Roger.
Right, at these frequencies, correct?
At middle frequency on the bands, Roger.
Right, 7.15. Okay. And their dipoles are relatively broad, so you've got good coverage of that antenna. And you really don't have to worry about a couple tenths. So, you don't need the tuner. Cover the whole band. 80 meters is the one where I find you come up on the ends. If you tune to 3.75, you will come up to about, 2.3 to 1 on the edges with the dipole. Go ahead.
Well, now, see, you're showing off. You got your higher ranking license than I, because my center frequency on 40 meters is 7237, right?
Oh, okay. I thought, the absolute center is what I was thinking of. But, irrespective of license. And so that's what I had thought. So I see what you're saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the extra class privilege lets you go a lot lower on 40. I have to quit at 7175.
Well, I do CW, so to me 7150 makes sense. Go ahead.
Roger that. Well, so you have a much bigger problem than I do. My band pass on these different meters is a lot less because of my general class license, so it's a more restricted band pass that I have to deal with, Roger.
Right, yes. So you can get a beautifully flat SWR across your spectrum, no problem. I can see that.
Roger, I have a little rise up on the edges, but maybe 0.3 or 4, off from the center. But I'm so seldom out that far that I don't worry about that too much.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's not going to hurt anything. And your losses are minimal at that point. So anyway, let's see now. Haven't thought about dinner tonight, but I actually cook here too. My wife may pick up another job, Jim, and she worked for Booz Allen Hamilton, and at one point she was consulting too. And then she came down here to retire. They were kind of burning her out, and she got a call from a headhunter, of all things, and they were very interested in her, and she may take it on. So the point of it is, I'll be doing a little less ham radio because I'll be cleaning the house and I'll be making dinner. K2YN.
Oh, Roger. Well, just put your chef's hat on and break out the Julia Child's cooking book. I think it was her. I'm not sure, but or you Google. Google is great for if you want to find out something, anything. Google's got the answers. So just consider Google your backup inspiration for cooking, Roger.
Right. Yeah, I'm good in the kitchen, so I've got many hours of experience cooking. And she likes the idea of coming home to a plate of my food. But that doesn't mean I don't refer to cookbooks. It depends on what dish it is. I haven't cooked every dish in the world. I have personal recipes that I keep in a tin, and I have about 50 personal recipes. So, cookbooks can have hundreds. And there was a call I heard for you, Jim, I believe. That was N9VX was in there too. So maybe I'll step aside and let him pop in. He probably has a good signal to you, Jim. Over.
Roger that, John. Well, let me say threes to you, sir. Sounding beautiful as normal. And I hope that you... I got something on the screen here. What is that? Okay. I just got this new monitor, and I had to shift my resolution to 2 or 3 grades up resolution-wise to make it fill the screen. And now I'm looking at this monitor, and gosh, I haven't ever seen an image quite that big. It's intimidating. Anyway, John, threes to you, sir. Like I say, great signal, and we'll be posting this up on YouTube in the next couple of days. So you know the drill. YouTube with a call letter search of Kilo Charlie 9 Victor Kilo Victor. And that'll bring up the Qso page, and look for my group AirCheck 92818 on 7189. So threes, John, a pleasure. Roger.
Roger, Jim, very good. And I enjoyed the time with you here. I like to spend a little time with you. It's always very pleasant and many times informative. So we'll say 73s, and I stay away from politics as a rule, but I'm going to just say quickly, I believe Kavanaugh. I like him. This is K2YN, handing it back to KC9VKV. Go ahead, Jim.
Roger, Roger. I think you may be right there, but time will tell. I mean, it's unfortunate that the man has to endure what he has endured, but that is politics of today, and that is what it is. So, unfortunately, anyway, three's that away, John, and this is KC9VKV with the Friday morning Qso-Vlog.